I think something really interesting that I've noticed too, and maybe this is just a purely Twitter thing, but I've heard
It's
some people
x.com.
express. Okay,
Oh, sorry.
I've heard some people express that they would prefer like text written tutorials as because like everything speedrunning wise right now it's video tutorials, right? And
I think both are good.
I'm curious. I think both are good too. I'm just curious to hear y'all's thoughts on that because that's not something like we used to have a lot of that in the old days, like old ancient days of speedrunning.
I can
And
actually
then
launch
YouTube
on
became a
that
thing.
really
It
quick.
became okay.
Because
Go for
Go
it.
for
Kirby,
it, yeah.
this is literally how I just learned Sacred Stones. Kirby Master wrote a just like paste bin of just like he wrote like two different ones. He wrote one for Sacred Stones itself, and he wrote one that covers like all of the GBA Fire Emblem games. And that is how I learned the run is just that. And then like being like, oh, it's just monkey see, monkey do, because it's literally just do these exact arrow movements and you can play the game. And you don't really need the explanation. Like you can technically just watch his run, copy the movements and cool. But like his explanations tell you how to do certain things like enemy control glitch,
Yeah.
tips on like just random tips, like just random things of like, why do you do X thing, like things of that nature. And I think text tutorials are good. It just, you need to be very good at writing in order to have that be a thing, if that makes sense. Because I don't think there is a single human being on planet that could write a text document about GGS and Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights and tell me how to do that shit. Uh, mm,
Yeah.
I think there are certain
That's not
things where
happening.
like text can only go so far, but
Yeah.
which I do think why video is obviously more popular, and then also just like everyone just has a fucking YouTube channel, you know, they're farming some views, but like
They're grinding.
yeah, but I do think that text is kind of a lost art, but I think what would be cool though is to have text along with a video, kind of like what Kirby Master did, even though it's not technically a tutorial, but it is kind of a tutorial because it's just the run and you just slow it down and then you can
Do
see
you
what it
like
does.
do you like watching like commentated runs ever or not really?
Me or everyone?
Yeah, or anyone really.
I would
No.
say I was about to say no, but then I just literally last night I watched an hour and a half video of Small Ant running Breath of the Wild 100%, and like during the run he was just explaining things that he was doing, and I was like, oh, this is. And then an hour and a half passed, and I was
see,
like,
I-
well. So I'm lying. I guess I
love
do.
that.
I like
Amazing.
it.
That's like the only speedrunning content I really watch regularly now. But there was a huge stint where it was Twilight Princess. Like I was super into watching Twilight Princess speedruns. Like that was some neuron activation for me. Like it's just so cool to like have like it literally is. I think having that written explanation and the video is like that's peak. Like that's perfect.
I would
for
agree.
me. And even though it's not like text in the video format, it's like him talking over it, and it's like edited and stuff like that. Edited.
Yeah.
But I was just curious if you
No, but I do
ever
think
watched this
that
kind of
like just to wrap my little point is I think that it would be valuable to accompany video tutorials with text tutorials. I think that would be good
just
just in general.
Yeah.
Just I think pairing both of them is a good idea rather than just doing one or the other, because some people do learn better with written material. Like, you know, I'm not one of them, but some people do actually do better just reading something and they're like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
not
for
me.
myself, so I have kind of a weird experience with this where when DMC1 was, or Devil May Cry was first kind of picking up speed as a speed game, it did not have any sort of resources or anything. So I went and did like a whole written thing where I listed out all the stuff that we bought on different missions, as well as like talked about like listed backups and like listed strats for all of the enemies per room. And not a lot of people read that thing and not a lot of people picked up the run from it. But the moment that I put out a video tutorial of it, there was like 3 or 4 new runners for it. And from there, because of that video tutorial, which I then, I linked my notes in there as well. Because of that video tutorial, the game grew like exponentially. And then even since then, Out with the Yang, she has made like another video to revamp what I did and bring it sort of up to the modern route. And there are like advanced notes out there, but a lot of people learn by watching that game and watching a lot of people. Like, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm just curious. So, like, did they like stumble upon your video and then they watched it, or were they interested in the game, went to SRC and then found your video and then was like, okay, I'm gonna do
I would say it was probably a
sure?
mix of things where, like, I know for one, there were friends that were interested in the game and they weren't really interested in picking it up until there was a tutorial. And then there were also people that stumbled into the SRC, found the tutorial, watched it, and then started doing the run. So it was a mix of different things. Or there were people that had been running the game for a bit and got better because of that tutorial. So it was one of those things where, like, and I've seen time and time again where I provide somebody notes for a game and they don't do shit with them, you know, because I don't know, motivation or something. So when people tell me, "Oh, I want more written stuff," I feel like half the time they're lying through their teeth because what they really want is they want a shortened version of whatever video is out there. So
That's
a lot of the
good
time,
point. I like that.
Yeah.
That's
So-
my
that's a
biggest
truth
pet
bomb.
peeve is fucking long tutorials where they just say a bunch of bullshit and don't tell you what you want to hear. Oh, I
Yeah.
hate it. Oh, there's so
Yeah,
many.
I mean, I get
oh,
that.
I
too.
am
Boils
guilty of
me.
doing that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I'm also
But
I
so-
am not
You know what,
guilty of
Like
doing that. My tutorials
So-
are flawless. They're not flawless,
So-
but like
For example, okay, so
there's
when I did
no filler,
when
basically,
I
though. Go ahead.
when I do notes now for games, and when I finally do like a tutorial for another game, like, or for example, actually, if this is for Devil May Cry, is a pretty good example here. So Unintended Chaos did a tutorial for Devil May Cry 5, the main campaign, and when I did notes for that, I basically just put out the buy list because, like, you know, like what upgrades you're supposed to get at what levels, and people will use those buy lists all the fucking time. For action games where like upgrades or buying new weapons or getting like different shit is involved, if you give somebody that at a glance, 100% they will use that shit. But if you give them a big detailed text document, they probably are not really going to look at that shit at all.
Yeah.
But like if you give them a video tutorial where you show them what to do and how to do it, and then you give them the shit that they can glance at like during the run, you know, that they're fine. Scruffington also has made like a whole guide for like a whole written guide for like Final Fantasy 13 all missions. I don't think I've seen any new runs of that category since he did that. And he spent hours on that thing, like days even. So I mean, number one, it depends on the genre, right? Because an action game or a platformer or an FPS, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of time to look at notes. So upgrades or points of interest or something like that are going to be what people, when they say they want text documents, that's what they want is, hey, can I get the cliff notes? But when it comes to RPGs or it comes to, what is it? Like just really long form games. That's probably the one where people are going to like want to sit down and read a dissertation because, like, for example, Final Fantasy VII, good luck, you know, like just watching a run and figuring out what to do with step count or figuring out how to salvage step count, which step count, for those unaware, is how the game actually tracks and like how runners manipulate random encounters to level up throughout the run. So you need something to like look at and explain that to you in written form, as well as somebody to show you that and what that looks like in practice. So I think that there's a bit of hyperbole when people are like, to wrap up my point, I think there's a little bit of hyperbole when people are like, I want more written stuff, because I have seen time and time again when people get handed written stuff and they just go, all right, well, time to boot up the game now and play it. You know, they just toss it behind, but they'll actually sit down with a video tutorial all the time and watch that and then do runs off of it. I've seen a game go from 20 runners to now 80 runners because of a video tutorial as opposed to a written one.
So have you ever, because it sounds like that you've written stuff specifically for one individual runner and then they don't
I
use
write
it,
stuff.
or is it
I
like,
know stuff generally for people. because
Just
I
generally?
write
Okay.
I write my notes like as if I'm looking at them for the first time,
Okay.
basically.
I thought you were like, because something I've learned through speedrunning is that generally with stuff like that, like you don't do that just for like one person.
Yeah, just for one
like
person.
you make that
no.
for the whole group of people, because I have found
Absolutely.
sometimes where it's like I make a video clip for somebody and then it's like nothing comes out of it.
Yeah,
But if I do it
Well-
generally, then I feel like,
there's a lot
it
more
becomes
mileage to
more
be had.
open, and then I actually there's some sort of feedback or something about it.
Definitely.
What are your
definitely
thoughts,
so.
Jaxler? Since you're the one who brought up the question.
Oh, on like the teaching kind of. I guess
No,
the
just
only,
because
like,
you said what are your thoughts on written notes? So I was just wondering like why you brought up the
Oh,
question.
Written
or
notes
blah, blah,
versus
blah, blah, blah.
video.
Well, I mean, the whole reason I brought it up is because like I just feel like there's so many different methods of teaching that I think that other fields and hobbies capitalize on that speedrunning really doesn't. Like I'll give you an example of like a hobby. Like I haven't participated in this hobby in like ages, but it's called letterboxing. It's essentially geocaching, but instead of like GPS and like marking a logbook, you find a trinket or something. You just replace that with like custom carved like line art, stamp art, and stuff like that, and so you stamp it down in your book. And so that's pretty much all done through text. There's really no video anything because it like started in like the double O's, right? And so, but like it like you don't need the video if that makes sense, right? But I don't know. I just thought it was fascinating, right? Because it's like I think because we live in an age where the way to grow things and the way to as we say in the field of game design, the medium is the message, right? And so because like the medium of YouTube and video is so prominent, that's the way that people engage with things generally now,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
I
definitely
like
does.
because you said it was kind of a lost art, and I think that's a good part of the reason why. It's also kind of part of the
Definitely,
reason that you've probably never heard of letterboxing, but probably heard of geocaching, right?
This is also why
Um,
we're doing a podcast. instead
I've heard of
writing
neither
articles
of
for a
these.
website.
So.
Oh, okay. Well, a lot of
But
people
I'm
have heard of
stupid.
geocaching.